Incident 1. On July 4, 2016, survival enthusiast Ethan Ward entered a remote Nevada canyon for a solo challenge. At 29, he had completed dozens of dangerous treks and felt confident in his skills. This time he planned a simple 24-hour endurance test to push himself just a bit further. The morning began cool and quiet, with soft shadows stretching across the canyon floor. Ethan walked steadily along the narrow path, breathing calmly and studying the terrain. By midday, the temperature rose far faster than he had anticipated. His single water bottle began emptying with alarming speed as the heat intensified. The canyon walls trapped scorching air, turning the trail into a suffocating corridor. Sweat streamed down his face as his pace slowed and his steps grew heavier. A sudden furnace-like gust blasted through the canyon, knocking dust into his eyes. Struggling to see, he climbed a steep rock shelf to reach higher ground. Without warning, the brittle rock cracked deeply beneath his boots. Ethan plunged straight into a narrow crevice hidden below the crumbling ledge. He landed awkwardly, his leg twisting sharply as he smashed against the stone. Gritting his teeth, he tried to pull himself upward, but the walls were too slick. His voice echoed desperately through the canyon, but no one was close enough to hear. The afternoon sun continued burning overhead, draining his strength rapidly. His breathing shifted into short, shallow gasps as dehydration overwhelmed him. Ethan slumped sideways, pressing weakly against the scorching canyon wall. Small, involuntary spasms shook his body as his energy faded. Night finally arrived, but darkness brought no rescue and no relief. The temperature dropped brutally, shocking his already weakened system. Hours before dawn, Ethan's movements ceased completely inside the silent crevice. Search teams eventually located him the following afternoon after he missed check-in. His death became a stark reminder of how even experienced survivalists can fall victim to the deadliest 0.1% of nature's challenges. Incident 2. On February 12, 2019, mountaineer Mark Ellison set out to cross a remote glacier in southern Alaska. At 34, he was known for calm judgment and years of cold-weather expedition experience. His goal was a 2-day solo traverse to test new winter gear in extreme conditions. The morning began crisp and silent, with distant peaks glowing under soft blue light. Mark advanced confidently, planting each step carefully across the frozen surface. By early afternoon, the wind grew sharper, carrying fine needles of ice across the glacier. His visibility shrank as the distant ridges slowly dissolved into pale haze. The temperature dropped rapidly, turning each breath into a painful burst of frozen air. Mark tightened his hood and pushed forward, determined to reach the next waypoint. Within minutes, a sudden whiteout swept over the glacier, erasing the horizon completely. He stopped to recheck his GPS, but the storm disrupted its signal and froze the screen. Disoriented, Mark veered slightly off course, unaware of the concealed crevasse field nearby. The surface beneath him shifted subtly, giving off a hollow crack. Before he could react, the snow bridge collapsed, dropping him into a hidden ice shaft. He slammed against the narrow walls, his gear scattering as he fell. Mark tried to anchor his ice axe, but the walls were too smooth and slick with frost. His calls for help vanished into the roaring wind above the crevasse. The cold intensified, draining warmth from his body far faster than he expected. His movements slowed as numbness spread across his arms and legs. Mark leaned sideways, his breathing becoming shallow and irregular. The blizzard continued raging overhead, burying his tracks entirely. As darkness settled, the temperature plummeted to life-threatening levels. Mark's body finally went still during the early hours of the next morning. Search teams found him 2 days later, deep inside the frozen crevasse. His death became a sobering reminder of how fast whiteout conditions can turn fatal, even for seasoned explorers. Incident 3. On September 8, 2017, cave diver Bram entered the Deepfall Caverns in northern Florida for a solo mapping dive. At 32, he was respected for precise technique and hundreds of hours underwater. That morning he planned a routine survey of an unexplored lower chamber. The water was calm, clear, and gently illuminated by his shoulder-mounted lights. Lucas descended steadily, following the guideline he had placed on earlier dives. As he moved deeper, silt drifted beneath him like slow-floating dust. A faint rumble echoed through the cavern, shaking loose debris overhead. He slowed, scanning the walls, unsure of what caused the sudden vibration. The water pressure rose slightly as he approached the narrow descent tunnel. Without warning, a surge of muddy water blasted through the passage behind him. His visibility dropped instantly, turning the cavern into a dark, swirling cloud. Lucas reached for the guideline, but the current snapped it out of his grasp. Disoriented, he drifted sideways into an unfamiliar side chamber. His breathing quickened as he checked his remaining air, now dangerously low. He tried retracing his movements, but the rising flood sealed the exit path. Lucas pressed his light against the wall, searching for any escape crack. The water level continued rising, squeezing him into a tightening air pocket. His regulator hissed as each breath became heavier and more frantic. He surfaced briefly, gasping against the cavern roof for the last pocket of air. The rising water eventually submerged the final space, forcing him underwater again. Lucas struggled for a moment, weakened by exhaustion and cold. His movements slowed, then faded completely in the dark chamber. The floodwaters stabilized hours later, leaving the cavern silent. Rescuers located him the next day after navigating the collapsed tunnels. His death became a harsh lesson about how unpredictable underground floods can be, even in map systems. Incident 4. On August 19, 2020, ultrarunner Aaron Hale began a long-distance training loop in the Arizona desert. At 27, he was known for pushing himself through extreme heat without hesitation. His plan was a simple dawn-to-noon endurance run across a familiar trail system. The early morning was quiet, with cool air drifting lightly over the sand. Aaron moved smoothly, maintaining a steady pace as the sun rose behind him. By mid-morning, the heat intensified faster than the forecast had predicted. The trail shimmered ahead, distorted by waves of rising heat. Aaron drank from his bottle, noticing the water level dropping rapidly. His breathing grew heavier as the temperature climbed above safe limits. A faint dizziness set in, but he continued running toward the next checkpoint. Minutes later, the ground blurred beneath him as a heat mirage swallowed the trail. He slowed, confused, struggling to locate familiar landmarks. The oppressive sunlight pressed down on him, draining his strength. Aaron stumbled sideways and collapsed onto the burning sand. He pushed himself back up, but his legs trembled violently beneath him. His vision flickered as the desert around him pulsed with shimmering haze. Aaron attempted to signal for help, but his voice came out as a weak rasp. The heat continued rising, turning every breath into a painful struggle. He fell again, this time unable to lift himself from the scorching ground. His movements slowed to small, involuntary twitches as heatstroke overwhelmed him. The sun beat down relentlessly as he lay motionless on the open trail. Hours passed before another runner discovered his collapsed body. Paramedics arrived quickly, but the desert had already taken its toll. Aaron was pronounced dead from severe heatstroke shortly after evacuation. His death became a stark reminder of how fast the desert can kill, even the strongest athletes.